Okay, I see it is about 3 minutes after, so we can go ahead and get started. Just want to welcome and thank everybody for coming to our March Neighborhood Roundtable for Bronzeville. My name is Kimberly Morris. I am a planner in the Southeast region and project manager for the Bronzeville community. So as a reminder to everyone here, these roundtables are our monthly convening of local stakeholders around the Invest Southwest initiative. Also, as a reminder, we do record these sessions and they will be made available on our website starting April 1st. So want to get started, want to welcome our aldermen that I see that are here, Alderman Pat Dow, and then Alderman Sophia King, who I see a representative from her office is here as well. But jumping right into our agenda, as always, we want to start off with a brief overview for Invest Southwest for those who may be joining us for the first time. We will have a quick announcement from our program manager for the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, Sophia Carey. We will get an announcement from our corridor managers, QCDC. We have a brief update of where we are with the Bronzeville RFP, and then we'll get into our conversation for the evening, which will be around transportation and infrastructure needs on the corridor. So I believe we have Sophia Carey on the line. Yes, I see her. So, like I said, we want to give a brief overview for those who, again, may be unfamiliar or joining us for the first time of Invest Southwest. So Invest Southwest is an unprecedented community improvement initiative created by Mayor Lori Lightfoot in order to marshal more than $750 million in public funding while coordinating across multiple city departments, community organizations, and corporate partners in order to realize the reactivation of 12 corridors across 10 neighborhoods on Chicago's south and west sides. And as a part of the larger Invest Southwest initiatives, these neighborhood roundtables were created with the intent of being open meetings consisting of representatives from the city agencies, automatic offices, neighborhood organizations, and community residents that would help advance local goals through a broad kind of cross-disciplinary approach that leverages both the insights of all of those organizations and residents, along with the resources of the local stakeholders. So this roundtable is just kind of one part of the suite of engagement strategies that the city has implemented to support the Invest Southwest initiative. Now I want to jump over to Sophia Carey, who again is the program manager for the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, is going to present some information about that program. Sophia.
Thanks, Kimberly. Just had to unmute myself. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me a few moments of your time this evening. I know many of you are already very much aware of the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund program. Some of you that I see here are actually existing grantees or previous grantees of the program. So glad to see some familiar names and faces here. I've got just a couple of slides tonight. This is actually a streamlined version of a more detailed information session that we had earlier in the month and is recorded and available for everyone's review on the NOF website. So if I happen to be moving a little bit too quickly or there are questions that I don't get a chance to answer, I would encourage everyone to check out the info session. And then at the end, I'll also put my email address in the chat so you can reach out to me directly. Next slide, Kimberly. Okay, so thank you, Kimberly. So we are currently in an open application period. We opened to accept applications on March 8th, and we have until April 9th. So it is coming up very quickly. And so if you are working on an application, you know someone that's working on an application, or you know someone who should be working on an application, we do ask that you encourage everyone to get their applications in as quickly as possible. So again, the deadline is next Friday, April the 9th. Next slide. What is the program? So the program is a financial grant. So these are funds that grantees do not have to pay back to the city of Chicago. And for today, I'm talking specifically about the small grants track. So these are grants that can go up to $250,000. In addition to the financial incentive, we also have a TA program that provides additional resources to help with knowledge and capacity building for our grantees. The purpose or the goal of the program is really three things. One is we want to support all of the local entrepreneurs and the small businesses that are already operating in these neighborhoods. So if there is someone in this neighborhood that needs some funding and some support to expand, to grow, to renovate their business, the NOF program is for them. We are also looking to attract new businesses and cultural amenities into the area. So if there are entrepreneurs out there who might not be currently operating in the neighborhood, but is interested in doing so, we welcome them to come in and again, provide the additional benefits to the residents that are in the neighborhood. And finally, by supporting the existing entrepreneurs and attracting new entrepreneurs, the goal is to provide overall economic development for the community. Next. For the small grants program, to be eligible, projects need to be on the eligible priority and invest Southwest corridor. So if you look at the screen on the right, there is a map. What is better is if you go to the website, which is chicago.gov/NOF, there, this map is actually interactive and you can type in an address. The map will then drop a pin where that address is located, and it will tell you if that address is located in one of these types of corridors. If you are, you're eligible for the small grants program. Next. In terms of who is eligible to apply, we are pretty open. We have applicants who are commercial property owners. We have applicants who are business tenants. We have nonprofits. And as long as you're in the local qualified area, or the QIA, you can take part in the NOF program. Again, for the small grants, we're looking at the eligible corridors, but there is a large grants program, in which case you don't need to be in the corridor, you just have to be in the QIA. Go ahead, next slide. Okay, so speaking of large and small grants track, the small grants is a competitive process. And so what we do is we ask everyone to submit their applications by a certain deadline. And then we review all of those applications, and based on the amount of funding that we have available, we provide grants, starting with the most shovel-ready and most catalytic and closely aligned projects to the community plan. Once selected, grantees are expected to complete their projects within 2 years. So it is, it can be, it seems like a long time sometimes, but when you're actually doing the projects, it's a relatively quick turnaround. For the large grants track, these are projects that are substantially larger, and the grants would be above $250,000 with a max of $2.5 million. These projects are a little different in that they do require city council approval, so they're not necessarily competing with other projects in the neighborhood. They just need to make it through city council approval. And because of the larger amount of funding, they do have to meet additional requirements for WMBE construction, local residency, prevailing wage, and they have to sign a project or redevelopment agreement. Both the small and the large grants track is eligible for expansion or renovation projects, as well as new build outs. And different from TIF funded projects, we will also help support new construction. So if someone's going on to a vacant property and wanting to build from the ground up, that is also eligible for the NOF program. Next. What can we pay for? So the NOF program is really looking for substantial catalytic investments. So we're looking for larger projects. Projects where residents and community members will really be able to see that something new and exciting is coming to a space. Something small, such as we just want to repaint the inside of our space, or we want to change a couple of light fixtures. Those are not the types of projects we're looking for. We will cover acquisition, demolition, environmental remediation as part of a larger project that will again bring in a new amenity or a business to the neighborhood. We'll also cover security measures. So any of the wiring or anything that needs to be affixed cameras, outside cameras that have to be affixed to roofs and walls, those are all things we can cover, as well as roofing, facade, and mechanical work. Couple of other things that we won't cover, we cannot pay for residential work. So if there are residential units or a mixed use building, we won't be able to cover any of that. For mixed use buildings, we will cover the commercial work, just not any additional work upstairs in the residential area of the building. And we will, we also are not able to address any building code violations that are currently in building court or have come out of building court and is required to be resolved because of how the case was completed or closed. We also can't do operating expenses. Next slide. So I've already talked a little bit about the technical assistance program, which along with the financial incentives are there and available for all of our grantees. Two other resources that we provide to our grantees are the concierge support, which basically means that as a grantee is going through city processes, such as licensing, Kenya knows very well that there are times where I send her an email and say, we need help with this license. Building permits, so working with the Department of Buildings for permitting as well as inspections, that we will help with the coordination with our sister departments to make sure that projects continue to move at a as quick of a pace as our grantees are able to keep it, and to not get slowed down by bureaucracy and red tape. And then finally is we also recognize that these projects are a lot of work for our entrepreneurs. And so from a business marketing perspective, we do recognize that anytime one of these projects hits a milestone, whether that is a groundbreaking event or a ribbon cutting event, that we come alongside our grantee as well as the community to acknowledge and recognize the hard work that has gone into meeting that milestone and really celebrating kind of the work that is being done. Next. So in terms of how to apply, it's really easy. Everyone starts with our website, which is chicago.gov/NOF. From there, you can look to see if an address is available or eligible, and you can start the application. If there's any questions, you can reach out to us. You can see that DPD is available. Summer Corps, who is our external program administrator, is also available to answer questions. Any questions for the small grants program can be directed to nof@cityofchicago.org. And like I said, before I close it, I'll go ahead and put in my email address in there as well, so you can reach out to me directly. For anyone that's interested in the large grants track, so that's anyone that's looking for a grant of greater than 250, the way to get started is to send an email to the NOF-large@cityofchicago.org email address, and the team that handles the large grants program will go ahead and start that process with you. That is pretty much it. I know there's a lot on the agenda tonight, so I'm happy to answer any questions or kind of kick things back over to Kimberly so that she can move on.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sophia. We did get a question in the chat that said, what services are available for pre-grantee applicants?
Oh, great question. Pre-grantee applicants. So I'm assuming these are, what are the resources to help someone to ensure that they submit a strong application? So for that, we really rely on our community partners. So I'm not sure if that question came from QCDC. I think they are on today. Rhonda and her team, they have actually done a phenomenal job finding, identifying our applicants and also working with them on the application process to make sure that they submit a strong and competitive application. So we have a lot of different community partners that are, again, listed on our website. There's actually a tab on our website that says applicant support. And if you go there, it actually talks about some of the criteria that we use and provides resources for each one of those criteria, as well as, again, a list of all of our community partners, of which QCDC is a very important group.
Great, thank you. Were there any more questions that anybody else had about the NOF program?
Kimberly, real quick, this is Tony at QCDC. The larger grant, is that a rolling application process, or is it only when the specific communities are announced that you can apply for the larger grant?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. And Jim, if Jim wants to jump in, that would be great too. I believe they're changing things. So you should be getting more information this year. I think they're moving towards a round-based process, but for now, they're happy to start the dialogue with anyone as long as you send them an email on that NOF-large@cityofchicago.org email address.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is Jim Harbin, and Sophia, you hit it right on the head. So one of the things that we really have leaned into is that you need to be able to, literally look at your clock and know at the beginning of the year, we're going to release an application. And in the middle of the year, we're going to release an application. And the NOF Large program kind of sees the value in doing that because people tend to start getting their projects teed up and ready for that submission. They also start working with community-based organizations in order to make sure they're as buttoned up as possible. So when those opening applications are there, they can submit a fully, close to a fully baked application. And NOF Large is kind of leaning that way. And I'll just, let this cat out the bag as well. One of the things NOF Large is also looking at is not necessarily being exclusively focused on the larger, and I'm literally using air quotes when I say that, projects, and looking at the projects that literally go beyond where our scope stops. In other words, we go at 250, so that 350, $500,000, 750, $1 million, those projects shouldn't be ignored. So NOF Large is kind of leaning into that and making sure, A, they have a steady cadence in order to open up their application, and then two, they're going to be looking at a variety of projects, not necessarily looking at those larger ones, because we have, again, other things in our toolbox that sometimes better fit that. We also want to be able to tackle those mid-range projects that go beyond the NOF small.
This is Tori Barrett. I've got a quick question. Can
Go ahead, Tori.
Oh, I apologize.
No problem.
Can either one, NOF small or large, be combined with other resources? So let's say, for instance, it's a new development project and you're getting light tech and TIF. Can you combine NOF with that?
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely. The longer answer is it's even better because, giving, particularly some of the RFPs that we're releasing, you know, there could be an opportunity to literally do some of that commercial space and get it ready for a particular tenant. And that tenant can actually need to do some additional renovations to better fit their business. And we can actually use NOF small to help support that. So to answer your question, yes, we've had many occasions where NOF large has been part of a larger capital stack. And we've also utilized NOF small to help support development that's already taken place and support the tenant that's actually going into the commercial space.
Okay, if I may, I have one follow-up.
Sure.
Okay, so if that's the case, then how do you, or when should you apply, knowing that, you know, the project isn't coming online for, let's say, 18 to 24 months? So do you just have that conversation with you all now so that as the time is coming, you'll know when to apply?
Yeah. So NOF large, I would certainly suggest that you would start that conversation now and just kind of make sure you're on the radar, you know, and Tori, I know, you know, some of the projects you're working on. Yeah, that conversation is warranted now. For some of for NOF small, for instance, it really makes more sense to be buttoned up and be kind of ready to know where your location is, how much your budget is, you know, because we had over 400 applications the last round. And we're literally looking for those projects that have had the support of the community-based organizations. And when they signal to us, this one is ready, you know, we really lean into that. And so to have speculation in terms of, well, I'm thinking about this site or I'm waiting for this development to happen in 12 to 24 months, we're not necessarily going to select those now because we believe that we can circle back in 12 to 24 months and catch them later. If that makes sense.
One question, this is Sandra Bivens. Jim,
Yeah.
piggyback off of Tori's question. Can you combine the SPIF and the NOFA? Can you go after both of them? You know, can we suggest that to people that want to do the work?
There's a caveat to that. I'm going to let Sophia walk you through that. We certainly don't push back on being able to utilize both programs, but we discourage utilizing them at the same time. You know, you can utilize one, demonstrate you know how to engage the program, complete your project, and if you have an expansion, if you have an addition, you can certainly decide if you want to go after another NOF grant or a SPIF program. But we discourage you going after both at the same time.
Yeah, and I guess the way I would say that is the same project cannot use both programs simultaneously. So if you've got a single location, what makes sense is to break it out into phases and have one phase go with one program. Once that's completed, if you have a phase 2, an additional expansion, then you can go through another program. But we're happy to talk to applicants on kind of a case-by-case basis and figure out what's the best way to work. Is it SPIF first? Is it NOF first? At the end of the day, applicants are welcome to apply for both at the same time if they're in a situation where both programs are open to them. But what happens is, as you get closer to getting that commitment letter, if it somehow works out where you're going to end up having a choice, we're going to ask you to pick one or the other, and we can help you kind of dissect what's the better option there. But with the SPIF program, oftentimes applicants end up on a wait list. And it might not be, until a year in that you are off that wait list. Whereas with the NOF program, you're competitive. So maybe you find out sooner whether you're in the NOF program, or maybe you're not selected in this round, but that doesn't mean you can't apply in a future round. So we always say, if there is an opportunity to apply for both at the same time, you can do so. It's just if you are in a situation where later on you're going to be eligible to get funding in both programs, we're going to ask for the same project. We're going to ask you to pick one, finish that project, and then come back and reapply for the other one.
I see Rhonda had her hand up. So if you want to unmute and ask your question, Rhonda.
Yes. Good evening, Jim. A quick question. For recipients who have been rewarded a small grant, 250 or below, and they've gotten closer to finalizing their budget and realize that they could utilize larger dollars, what would be the timeline or the process for them having a conversation with a larger, moving that to a larger grant discussion while not jeopardizing the small grant because they may stay with that if it doesn't work?
Yeah, I would say immediately to start that conversation so we can, arm them with, what the possibilities are. We can do a lot more grants with the NOF small, if you will, given that we have that 250 cap, as opposed to NOF large, where you can just imagine they are limited in terms of how many projects they actually award. But we can certainly and be more than willing to walk through, what the dynamics are of that particular project, Rhonda, and see what makes the most sense. We, at the end of the day, leave it to applicants to make decisions for themselves. We think there's more of an opportunity to participate in the NOF small, given that we can literally engage more applicants. So, but we're open to that conversation.
Okay, should that start with you?
Yeah, me or Sophia. I take my orders. I take my orders from Sophia.
Okay.
And I took my orders from Jim, so there you go.
But yeah, either one of us is fine.
Okay.
Either one of us is fine.
All right, thank you.
All right, and I want to wrap this up, but I see we have one more question in the chat, so if we can answer this one. Can NOF funds be used to acquire city-owned land?
That's a good one. So early on in the program, we did that, but the more we start talking ourselves through that process, we were literally creating a grant program to provide to buy city-owned land, that we have programs that literally allow individuals to pick up that land for little or nothing, or the cost of the remediate. It just didn't make sense. So yeah, is a policy now, we don't allow NOF to be used to literally purchase city-owned land when we've got other processes and other tools, if you will, in our toolbox to help convey city-owned land.
All righty, thanks for that, Jim. Thanks again, Sophia. Thanks, Jim, for answering those questions for us about NOF. Again, the round closes on April 9th. So please, if you are aware of small businesses that are in need of these funds, encourage them to apply. I want to move on to our next speaker, Rhonda McFarland with QCDC, who's going to give us a brief update about some upcoming events.
Thank you, Kim. Wanted to share, as most of you know, QCDC runs a series of workshops, networking events, seminars throughout the calendar year. And our programming year generally starts about March. So wanted to share the calendar. I will also put our general email in the chat. If you don't see the full calendar and you want additional information, you can email us. We are already through the first 3 events on this calendar. I will say the next event, thank you, Yvette. The next event was scheduled for this coming Monday, excuse me, defining your unique value. That event had low subscription, so we have postponed it. However, if that is a workshop or a service that you think your business can benefit from, please reach out to us at contactus.qcdc.org, and we can help facilitate you receiving that same information outside of a larger seminar workshop. Our next event will be on Monday, the 12th of April, social media marketing strategy. I think we have 30 people already registered for that class. So there's still room. These are all web-based, and that'll be a 90-minute session in partnership with one of our vendors we use quite a bit and work with quite a bit, which is 37 Oaks. And then I'd like to highlight that in May, our shop, Bronzeville Shop Local marketing this year under Fall in Love with Bronzeville will be focusing on retail businesses. So retail business partners who are not registered on the Shop Local Bronzeville website, please get registered as soon as possible. It is a free platform, shoplocalbronzeville.com. And that goal for the month of May will be to highlight our retail businesses throughout the business corridors. And then the next official webinar will be on May the 3rd, and that's planning pop-up and special events. We think that one is going to be really important as we all continue to follow the guidelines of wearing our masks, washing our hands, and watching our distance. Then we can come out more and folks will start planning special events to allow for them to sell their wares and their goods. And we want to make sure that all of our businesses take as much time as they can to prepare and get the best bang out of all of those efforts. I won't go through the second half of this document, but again, if you contact us at QCDC, excuse me, contact us at qcdc.org. You can get the full schedule and get on the mailing list if you're not already on the mailing list. This is the public list through July. We already have our schedule planned for the entire year. And those dates will come out as we get closer to the events. And as QCDC has always done in the past, as we see topics or partnerships or collaborations that are brought to us, we will continue to add them into our calendar and resources. And again, our team is available for one-on-one consultations with business owners as needed. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Rhonda. So we want to move along in our agenda. So the next thing we want to give a really brief update on is the Bronzeville RFP. So a lot of you have been along for the ride since September in crafting and developing the RFP for 449 through 51 East 51st Street. So we went through a 3-month community engagement process where we were able to develop a concept that the community wanted to see, that they felt that aligned with their priorities, and basically what was needed in the community. So just as a refresher, these were the things that were pulled out of these community visioning sessions as things that the community wanted to see out of this new development at this site. So in general, we wanted a mixed-use building that provided market rate residential and a mix of, with a mix of unit sizes, ground floor commercial that had space for retail and community services, in addition to parking and addressing some of the parking concerns that are in this area with this development. And again, those priorities that the community felt that was important that this RFP addressed were walkability, enhanced streetscape, community safety, a diversity of retail goods and services, and really a celebration of community. So again, through a series of roundtables, visioning sessions, and one-on-one stakeholder interviews, we were able to establish these community priorities. So that's kind of where we've been so far. The RFP was released in November 30th. And responses were due yesterday. And so I am excited to announce that we received 3 proposals for the Bronzeville RFP site, and we'll begin to review and evaluate each of those proposals. So our next roundtable, which will be in April, the department plans on announcing basically the development teams and providing an overview of each of those proposals. And then May to late May to early June, each of those development teams will present those proposals in this platform. And we'll work with both the Alderman's office and our corridor manager to make sure we get the word out about these development proposals and presentations, basically to ensure that community members, businesses, and those that are directly impacted by this development are represented on the call and are able to provide feedback. So there are several points during this evaluation period where community is being engaged and will be able to provide feedback. So the first, again, is at that developer presentation where the community can provide questions directly to the development team. Secondly, after the presentation, DPD will provide a recording of all the presentations in addition to a survey where people can provide feedback on each of the proposals. And we will utilize this feedback as a very integral part of the criteria by which we are judging these proposals. I see I had a question in the chat.
Kim, I have a question for you, Sandra Bivens again. Now, this is on 51st Street, okay? I don't know how involved my residents have actually been in this process since I have not been involved in this process. So I think that we need to talk about these three proposals, who they are, what are they proposing, so I can get the information out to the community.
Yes, so that is a part of our timeline, Sandra. Next month at our April roundtable, DPD will provide an overview of both the teams and their proposals. Again, we want to provide time for outreach and also for the development team to present, get their presentations together. And so we estimate about late May, early June, us having these development proposals presented to the community. So we have time kind of in between our next roundtable in April and the developer presentations to connect to the different organizations so that we can get the word out and get as many people on the line and as much feedback as we can about this site.
Is one of these developers KLY Developers?
I actually can't say right now. We're still reviewing.
What's the address again you're talking about?
This is 449 to 51 East 47th Street. So that's roughly 47th and Vincennes.
Okay. Well, I need to just get some information out into the neighborhood so that I can get some feedback to you guys on what the community is, really thinking about the project.
Yep. And like I said, we'll be working with the community organizations to do just that during that evaluation period before the developer presentation happens. So. Okay. Any other questions about that? Alrighty. If not, we'll move on to our topic of discussion tonight, which will be the corridor infrastructure and transportation needs. So as we work to bring these kind of catalytic developments online to the corridor, we also want to be cognizant of the infrastructure and transportation needs that will be needed in order to support the increased activity that these sites will produce. So with the goal of creating a unified and safe and walkable, attractive destination, we really want to look at a couple things this evening. One being pedestrian safety, two being placemaking, and then overall infrastructure improvements that we can utilize, again, in order to create this walkable commercial corridor that is hopefully a destination for the neighborhood in the future. So looking at things, went a little too far, sorry about that. So looking at things in the pedestrian realm, we want to think about how to utilize wide sidewalks, improved pedestrian signals, and improving the safety of the crosswalks. As far as creative placemaking, things like neighborhood wayfinding kiosks, public plazas, and furniture and seating areas. And then lastly, making sure that the infrastructure, again, is friendly to multimodal transit. So correct bike infrastructure, pedestrian friendly, making sure that the area is transit friendly as well. So making sure that at these busy intersections and those where we're bringing this additional commercial retail, that we have these infrastructures in place to support all of these different modes of transit, and that these sites are accessible via different modes of transit. So I want to kind of break this down by corridor and corridor by corridor to really talk about what is currently there, and again, what the needs are as we look at some of the new construction that we have coming online for these corridors. So looking at 43rd Street, again, excuse me, the Invest Southwest corridor on 43rd Street goes from Prairie to Cottage. So currently, the characteristics of this corridor that is mostly single-story developments. You have a couple spots of multifamily units along King Drive, but it's mostly single-story, primarily residential uses with pockets of retail. So we have the retail that is at 43rd and Forestville. We also have some new retail coming online around the Green Line. So you see those higher densities kind of at the bookends of these corridors, but kind of in the middle here is mostly newer construction, single family homes. And so the corridor as it stands seems to be suited for additional residential uses, along with more retail at these important nodes that we've identified that they're already kind of sprouting up. So some of the questions we want to think about as we look at this corridor specifically, and that we're posing today to the group are, what are the most pressing infrastructure transportation needs around this corridor? Is the corridor walkable? Why or why not? And what improvements do we need to make in order to make it more walkable? Again, going back to that multimodal access, is it accessible via multi-modes? And does the current infrastructure support multimodal transit? And also, are there places where we think creative placemaking makes sense? And again, we are just looking at the 43rd Street corridor from Prairie to Cottage. So I can kind of stop there and let people give thoughts and feedback about what they think on the current conditions of the corridor.
Kim, my question would be to you. Have you looked at the different plans that other people, they've been looking at 43rd Street a long time. Have you all investigated what other plans are getting ready to occur on that strip, or who has put in to do some work on that strip? You know, I mean, before we can just say, this is great and this we need to do, we need to see who all has plans for that strip, because 43rd Street been on the map for a minute.
Yeah, so we know that CTA is looking at the 43rd Street Green Line stop in order to make some renovations there. We know that CDOT is also looking at 43rd Street for some streetscape improvements. So again, this is kind of us beginning those conversations so that we can inform basically CTA and CDOT about what the community desires and what we feel is needed on this strip of the corridor before they kind of solidify plans. We want to make it known to them and make it explicit about what the community thinks is needed on these corridors.
What about individual developers? Are you all looking at people who have come in for permits and things to do some individual development?
Yeah, so we are aware of the developments that are happening along the corridors. Again, like I said, we're looking at the high density retail mixed use that's coming along at 43rd and the Green Line stop. We're looking at some of the mixed use developments that we have that are coming along 43rd around Vincent's. So we're taking all of that into account. And again, with that increased activity, we want to make sure that the infrastructure is in place to support the new developments that we have coming up.
Hi, I'd like to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead. Your name, please.
My name is Zuri. I'm here with my sister-in-law, Minnie Thompson.
Okay.
So we're at her house on 43rd and Forestville.
Okay.
I live down the street on 49th and Vincennes. And just really comparing our corridor, 43rd, 47th, to those of other communities. We have young children, so we walk to meet each other, to go to the park. But it's not as comfortable as it would be in a community that has businesses for our children to play, inside, like activities, more restaurants, coffee shops, bookstores.
And even the basic infrastructure, like the sidewalks on some locations on 43rd and 47th, they're so cracked. Like I'd prefer to just walk in the street instead of taking a stroller down the extremely bumpy sidewalk. And there's always lots of trash as well. It just doesn't make for an appealing place for my children to walk and play along as we walk through our neighborhood. And I second Zuri with the need for additional retail.
Oh, you made an excellent point. So yeah, you made an excellent point about just sidewalk improvements and how that contributes to how walkable the corridor is. Any other thoughts or feedback? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm a novice at this stuff, and I'm relatively new to Chicago. And I'm wondering who would I talk to about getting sidewalks repaired and picking up, having more trash picked up along the side of the road.
Yeah, so sidewalks would be a
You
seat.
should see your alderman about sidewalks and trash.
Oh, Miss Dowell, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you? It's nice
Fine.
to see you.
Sidewalks usually get done through the city's, if it's a trip hazard, CDOT will take care of it right away. If it is a just an improvement that has to be programmed for, when we have opportunities like this, the Invest Southwest program presents us with a bigger opportunity to do more than what would normally get done if this was not a focus area. On the trash pickup, street sweeping begins on Thursday. There's a schedule that comes out online. It will be in my April newsletter. And that's how the street sweeping gets done. Unless there is a really egregious problem, you can call 311 and it can be addressed in between street sweepings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for that, Alderman. Any other comments about walkability of this corridor? We heard that sidewalk conditions are an impediment to walkability. What about other things about like biking. We know that this corridor is obviously accessible via train because there's the train station right here. But what about biking amenities? I don't know if we have bikers on cyclists, I'm sorry, on the line, but how accessible or easy to move through this corridor is it for bikes? Or do we feel like this corridor needs to be accessible via that mode of transportation?
It's a good street for bikes. It's not as much traffic as 47th Street. So it is a pretty good street for bike traffic.
And there's a new 43rd Street overpass that's going up for the lakefront. It would be a perfect match for those bicycles. And also I would suggest more stop signs after King Drive. It's just a straight shot. And you have Vincennes one stop sign and then nothing else until Cottage Grove, and that can be a problem.
Hey man, you slowing down our streets, Phil.
Right, no, drag racing is over, Dion.
This is Tony at
Across the
QCDC.
street with their kids, they need to have some stop signs to slow you down.
Kim, the only thing I have to add to that is that 43rd Street, there's a lot of residential and with the commercial sprinkled in between, and there's a lot of multi-unit residential buildings. So there's a lot of people that park on 43rd Street. So the challenge is how you try to add a bike lane on 43rd Street, without compromising or adding to that challenge that the street is, certain times of the day, I would suppose evenings or whatever as such, it's probably more congested because people are home from work or whatever, and there's the street fills up with parking. So how do you do that and do bike lanes so that people can get comfortably down the street? And then as far as transportation is concerned, right now, the CTA, the number 43 bus goes up and down that street. I don't know if there's anything that can be done to improve the bus stops or whatever as such. And I don't mean to put in bus shelters or do that type of thing, because that sometimes has been a challenge. But what else do we do with the CTA to make those stops a little nicer, or update them or whatever that helps improve the corridor here?
Who was that speaking, Kim?
That was Tony Padal, Tony Rogers.
Oh, okay.
Tony Rogers.
All right, great. Thank you. If you could introduce yourself, but just say your name because I'm taking notes as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, that was really, really good points, Tony.
Yeah.
And so you talked about bike lanes. Is bike lanes something that 43rd Street could support? Being that the street is narrower, do you guys feel like bike lanes are needed on 43rd Street?
Kim, this is Rhonda from QCDC. To Tony's point, I think that there should be more investigation, that the concept of bike lanes could potentially affect the already tight parking, and with additional development that is already in play for commercial retail business and more housing, we should be able to really take that into consideration. The second thing I would add is Guion spoke, who those who know us know that he's a very avid biker, but we also have several biking entities in the community, and this may be a good opportunity to have them help to influence that discussion, because the bikers go to their shops, their businesses, and are part of their groups to really influence what makes sense for that community.
And that's true. I'm sorry, Pat, go on.
No, go ahead, Sandra.
No, I was just going to agree with Guion, is that, you need to see how that biking is going to deal with in relationship to trafficking and how things are going to move in relationship, like Rhonda is saying, to the people that actually live in the community. Do they really bike? Do they care if there's a bike lane? Those are the type of things that we have to look at, you know.
Yeah, and Kimberly, I just want to suggest that you might want to talk to Mike Smith in the Department of Transportation, who is already putting together a planning process to look at the bike lanes in this area, including 43rd Street, including King Drive and other locations, which would include, as Rhonda suggested, more people who are involved in biking and those people who have to live next to bike lanes. I think he's planning to do that later this fall.
Okay, no, that's a really good point, Alderman. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh, can I make a point?
Yeah, go ahead. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Anthony Yeboah. I live in, or I own a property on 4346 South Lake Park Avenue. I'm looking at the street and I walked there a few times and I'm wondering sometimes the presence of parking, if you look at it visually from where a person comes or navigates from the sidewalk and then there's a car parked on street parking and then there's traffic going on and with the restrictions we have with traffic, that does not give you opportunity to then create a 3 feet to 4 feet that you need for a bike lane because you're already tight in there. So I'm wondering whether there are opportunities to say there's another street just directly south of 43rd, whether there are walkable paths in the future to be considered within the community by taking that in through those alternate route, and people will then be able to come up to 43rd when they need to, either by way of expanding the walking on 43rd and bringing the bike in at the back or not, you know, and maybe there might be some security issues involved that might not help. But I also think that some level of growing trees or encouraging some level of planting might foster this kind of mixed use community and placemaking for people to use the sidewalk more, especially when there are people with children and inhabitants living in there. So those are opportunities to look at. And then the last thing I was going to say is, and I don't know how possible this is, but I look at that on-street parking and I wonder whether the other perpendicular streets that come up to 43rd can rather host the parking, and the parking can be completely taken off 43rd to make opportunities for either expanded walking or biking if there is a need for it, and then just eliminate the parking and put them on the side streets or the streets that come perpendicular to 43rd. So.
Okay, so limiting on-street parking and maybe providing some off-site parking. Okay.
Yeah, and this is all suggestions because, so for instance, I did see that there were portions of unoccupied land where things like children playing lots and stuff can be done, and maybe parking can be put around that are directly on 43rd rather than putting it directly on the street, and create a much more conducive concourse there.
Right, now that's really good feedback. And so you mentioned placemaking, so I want to open that up to other people on the call, as if you have any ideas or places where you think along 43rd Street you would like to see some creative placemaking. So whether that be through tree planting, like Anthony had just mentioned, or through some tactical urbanism where there are things that we do on the public right of way. Are there places where people gather, I guess, where you think that would make sense?
Kim, this is Rhonda from QCDC.
Mm-hmm.
as we've discussed a couple times, we definitely want to and hope to, through Invest Southwest, improve some of the placemaking and the branding, if you will, along the corridor, while being sensitive to what is functional and practical, and having a discussion that oftentimes things that are planned through CDOT and other agencies aren't fully vetted through the community, and specifically with organizations that manage the SSAs such as QCDC and 51st Street. And then we are left with trying to maintain these elements that the city is not maintaining as we try to fight through, this process. So I want to be really sensitive to that. And Alderman Dow knows that we had elements that were in the third ward portion of the corridor placed by CDOT that had to be removed. And the process of removing those things became very difficult. And they were issues that were creating opportunities for crime. So let's be really clear about how we go about this discussion of what is very feasible, attractive, and has a long-term effect, and that the city is committing to maintaining over the long haul. And that's not something that, we've seen in the past, and now we're in a budget crisis. So we really need to, be cognizant of that factor.
No, that's a really good point, Rhonda. And essentially why we want to have these platforms, have these conversations. So I know that you will be plugged in very soon to CDOT, who, like I said earlier, are kind of looking at the corridor and trying to figure out how to make improvements on this corridor. So we will be looking to just loop everybody in again to make sure what they are proposing aligns with the community says that they want, need, and again, makes sense based on a sustainability factor where it is able to be maintained. I do want to be cognizant of time. I feel like we got a lot of good comments and feedback on 43rd Street, so I want to just move on to kind of the next strip of our corridor along the same lines of as 43rd, looking at Cottage Grove, which has a different feel to it, right? So Cottage Grove kind of starts off north with smaller retail, and then as you go further south, it scales up to more high traffic commercial uses. You have a mix of new mixed use commercial and residential buildings as far as 4400 Grove. And then you also have some mixed use office spaces just south of that. So as it is developing, Cottage Grove is seeming to be more suited towards the larger scale mixed use development. So again, along those same lines, what are kind of the most pressing infrastructure and transportation kind of needs along Cottage Grove? I know we talked about the walkability of 43rd Street and how that has more of a, I guess, a small scale community feel, but Cottage Grove feels different in that it's more, like I said, high traffic uses, and a little less walkable at this point. So what are kind of your thoughts about how we can make this part of the corridor more pedestrian friendly? And again, thinking about how those multi-modes intersect, how do we avoid like problematic intersections and a cohesive, basically, intersection between the multi-modes? So I want to just jump to our questions. Again, we're looking at whether or not this stretch of Cottage Grove is walkable, how we can make it more walkable, and if the current infrastructure supports multimodal transit, and do we think there's places for creative placemaking?
Good evening, Kim. This is Yvette Warren with QCDC. The most striking thing for me on Cottage Grove as a female is the lighting.
Mm.
I would like to see the lighting to be more just bright.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that definitely ties into walkability, that ties into safety, like you were saying, and that's an important insight. So thank you for that, Yvette. I see I have a hand raised. Cecilia, you can go ahead and mute.
My name is Cecilia Cuff. I am representing the Bronzeville Winery, which is on the 4400, which will be on the 4400 block of Cottage Grove. And I think that from a commercial standpoint, we were hoping that there might be some, I guess, access to more walkability from being able to draw people in for commerce for that whole entire Bronzeville block. I know that there's probably about, I don't know exactly how many businesses that the QCDC has worked to put in that space, but I think all of our unified kind of vision is that would become a gathering place. And so I think as a result, we kind of need to focus on making that corridor itself look less industrial and more, I guess, more like an area where people would want to visit, not just from that neighborhood, but also from all over, so that our businesses can be fruitful all year round. Not only for people, I think our first main aim is the people, especially who live above our building, but also in the neighborhood. But I think we want people to feel safe, comfortable, and we want people to spend more time than just go to their location and leave. And to mirror what Yvette said, I think the lighting, I think trees and some sort of streetscape or any sort of small scale art would be another draw from an overall, high level standpoint of the overall walkability of the neighborhood.
No, that's great insight, Cecilia. So thank you for sharing that. And really insight, like you were saying, into how businesses perceive that corridor and how walkability is important to the businesses that we are trying to attract to that corridor. So thank you for that.
Kimberly, if I could say something, this is Tony at QCDC. I just want to piggyback on what Cecilia was saying. QCDC helped curate 8 tenant spaces there in the 16,000 square feet of commercial retail that they had available. But my biggest concern with that area, as far as walkability is concerned, is that I think that the blocks, certainly you can walk the streets as such, but there's so many stretches of vacant lots that are undeveloped. Some of them are privately owned and some of them may be city owned, but you know, there's just so many large gaps, broken teeth, as I call them sometimes, where there's nothing there. And that makes it the challenge of coming up that street. So, you know, if whoever would just encourage more development, those people that own that property and they're just sitting on it waiting for, you know, the world to explode, or I don't know what it is they're waiting for. But if development could be encouraged, not only here, but wherever, or in other locations, particularly the commercial and retail corridors, you know, that makes all the difference in the world. So I think that that's what we need to look at here, how to encourage and support more development in these corridors.
And to that point, this is Yvette again with QCDC. we get inquiries regularly, daily almost, about spaces like 4400. And because we don't have those spaces to steer potential business owners to, that puts us as a community sort of missing out on that opportunity. And those business owners are then looking at other communities.
Mm. Great point, absolutely, Yvette.
No, definitely agree with both of you, and thank you guys for providing that insight. Again, like I said, I think it's important as we are trying to bring about new businesses, trying to bring about new developments, that we make sure that we have infrastructure in place that would provide the walkability that businesses, especially small businesses, need to support their business. So that's why I think it is important that we utilize, this platform of Invest Southwest to think about what these priorities are and how do we move this forward. So thank you guys both for providing that insight. Do we have any more comments specifically around this corridor? I guess specific to Cottage Grove, I'm thinking this is a more high traffic corridor than 43rd Street. So are there any, I guess, spots where the interaction between cars, pedestrians, bikes, and maybe public transit are problematic and need to be improved? So again, things like maybe providing pavers, improved pavers to make sure that side crosswalks are clearly identified. Are there any things like that stick out that that are prevalent and problematic on this corridor?
It seems that the corner of, this is Yvette again, I'm sorry. The corner of 43rd and Cottage gets very congested, specifically the southwest corner. I believe that's the King Center that's there with the bus stop, and then the, it's just not, there is not enough egress for all the activity that happens right there. That's necessary activity. The safe passage folks, the bus, it's a lot of activity that happens there. And I see bicycles there with the bus, and it gets a little bit congested very easily. So if there were a way to broaden that area, I think that would be good. Now, I know that also affects the street and all of that as well, but just from the perspective of safety.
No, you bring out a good point of that. So again, kind of identifying where those intersections between the multimodal uses don't work, and how do we kind of talk through those issues and try to figure out better ways for them to work. That's a good point.
Kim, also look at 46th and Cottage Grove. There's a post office that's on the southeast corner, directly across the street from a fire station. I don't know, it seems that people are always parking on the west side of the street trying to run over to the post office and get into the mailbox, and people are trying to run to catch the bus from one side to the other. So that seems to be a corner where there's a lot of activity. And then, when a fire truck and ambulance is trying to pull out, it just seems like there's some drama going on there all the time. So that's my 2 cents.
No, that's a good point as well. Yeah, I've definitely experienced that as well, Tony. So thank you for that. And lastly, I guess, what about creative placemaking for Cottage Grove? I think Cecilia talked a little bit about creating the sense of place in order to attract kind of the clientele that she's looking for. So what do we see as the opportunities for maybe some creative placemaking along Cottage Grove?
Hi, this is Andre Guichard with Gallery Guichard, and we bike around the neighborhood quite a bit, and in general, there's not a lot of color on Cottage. And what about funding for mural activations for a lot of the large focal buildings, particularly with Harry Lennox's new building? There's a lot of focal walls that if activated, if there was funding for activating large scale murals, I think it could bring a lot of excitement to that corridor.
That's a really good point. Thank you for that, Andre. I see Cecilia has her hand up again. Do you want to unmute yourself and say your comment, Cecilia?
One other thing that I've done in the past is actually worked with, kind of to piggyback on what Paula was mentioning earlier about who owns Cottage Grove assessment, but actually working with the developers and local nonprofits to have the developers make a donation to specific nonprofits, which would then kind of help to create these community unity moments, but also it would be art that would actually be representative of the community. I know that there are a lot of nonprofits and there are a lot of art-driven nonprofits, or even if we wanted to look at seasonal aspects of doing like a community farmers market or something like that, there are also nonprofits that, you know, are there, or community farm shares and grow. I think there's 4 or 5 right in Bronzeville. So I think placemaking is great, but to speak to Rhonda, if it's going to be something that we have to clean up afterwards, or something that, you know, is just being put somewhere, why not use the spaces that are already vacant so that we can take something that's kind of negatively affecting psychologically and also economically a space, and instead use it for something positive.
Oh, that's a great point. I see we have a couple of hands, right? Oh, Rhonda, do you want to go ahead and unmute and say your comment?
Yeah, sorry about that. I wanted to piggyback on Andre's comment, which was a great idea about color, and just suggest that on the private properties, the time to start putting proposals in front of private developers is as soon as possible. And we're, as Andre knows, and Francis and other artists that we work with are happy to participate with some of our other partners that are on the line, because those developers need to think about those opportunities as they are putting their budgets together and developing. That's a different discussion than art that is on vacant city land. And we would, like to suggest that resources that the city is putting in be more for permanent long-term opportunities, and continue to push and engage and do all that it can to promote development of the vacant city lots, so that they actually get life through building and business and housing.
And if I could coattail on what Rhonda was saying, maybe a coordination with the corporate effort and the city effort, so that there could be mural festivals where we're actually coloring the entire corridor. So the vacant lots, if there's no development, even something as small of investment as a container that we could then put a mural on. And if you look at 38th in Michigan, that large lot was instantly turned into kind of like a gathering space after a mural was placed there. So if we look at how just in that one instance on 38th in Michigan, how a 60-foot by 8-foot mural activated a 5-lot space that was dormant and kind of opened it up. I think we could do that in coordination with private owners and city lots to activate it at once so that you can see it happen together. So maybe it's just a little more coordination with the funding, with the private dollars.
Yeah, and so with that, and I love these ideas that you guys are bringing up. And with that, is there, I guess, an optimal site that you really feel would maximize its location to kind of bring about some of these activations that you're talking about, the coloring of the corridor? Is there a specific location that we think that would be prime for this to happen?
I think it could be a combination of looking at our cultural sites or our cultural institutions. So Harry Lennox new development on 43rd, bringing attention to that with color, moving around the corridor and looking at other cultural institutions so that you not only identify it with an address and a marquee, but some of our key cultural institutions are also identified with large scale murals. And then we fill in the spaces with smaller projects so that the entire corridor is full of color and culture reflective of our community.
That's a really good point. Thanks for that, Andre. I see Stephen Mitchell has his hand up, so if you want to unmute and ask your question, Stephen.
Yeah, sorry. Two things, and I'm not sure what category this goes under, but bike racks. I think, having bike racks, and we kind of talked about, the bike lanes, but particularly on nice summer days and nights, having bike racks and, again, I'm not sure how they would be divvied up or as far as where you would put them, but that would be something that would be, encourage people to ride bikes and be more visible in the neighborhood. And then another thing, just generally speaking, on 43rd, 47th, and other places, like I feel like lighting, very good, bright lighting is just very, very important. Because the darker it is, the more seedy it looks, but the brighter it is, the more vibrant it looks. And I think it tends to also make the criminal element go away when it's very, very bright. So I don't know where this fits in the discussion, but I just wanted to put those recommendations out there.
No, excellent points, excellent points. And it fits right into what we were talking about in kind of that multimodal approach to making these corridors accessible. So not only just prioritizing having enough parking, but like you said, do we have enough bike racks for people who want to bike to this area? And then where do we put those bike racks? Again, strategically placing them maybe around train stations, cultural institutions, things that draw people to the area, to make sure that these developments are supported in that way. So that was an excellent comment and fit right into what we were discussing. So thank you for that. We do have a couple more minutes, so I want to move on to 47th Street. I know we've talked a lot about just ways we can activate, and I feel like we've gotten pretty good responses. I don't know if anybody has specific comments or concern about 47th Street, but we're all familiar with the landscape of 47th Street. So we have very high traffic, commercial, retail, and institutional uses, kind of at the bookends of the corridor. But then in the middle, it's mostly kind of single story local retailers. And so this stretch of the corridor has a lot of vacancies. And so additional retail, additional commercial, additional mixed use at the nodes is what would we be looking to bring. But again, how do we support that via the infrastructure? And so I know 47th Street kind of presents its own challenges just with the businesses and the activities that are there as far as walkability. But anything else, I know people talked about lighting, so I believe all of those things really apply to all of the corridors. But if there was anything that hasn't been mentioned yet, that you feel like needs to be brought out specific to this 47th Street corridor, feel free to bring that up.
Kimberly, I would like to ask, this is Alderman Dowell, I would like to ask Andre and Francis Gashard to give me an opinion about the bump outs there. Useful, not useful. I hear two sides, you know, sometimes people complain to me about those bump outs. Some people love them. Just want to get your feedback.
My comment would be more not useful because 47th is a truck route and so much traffic. There's a lot of traffic that biking 47th is very dangerous because of the traffic. So if there was an opportunity to expand the lanes to allow for a dedicated bike lane, I think that would be a big plus. And the bump outs actually don't help because it almost people think it's a second lane or they try to use it as a passing lane and they realize it's just a bump out. So I don't think, other than the beautification, it isn't functional where because of the heavy traffic, we could do without it and utilize it for a possible guaranteed bike lane for more protection for our bicyclists and more walkability.
Thank you. Definitely want to have that question considered. Kim?
Alderman Dow, if I could just, this is Stephen Mitchell. I agree wholeheartedly with Andre, but the benefit that I have seen, and I've been living there for 21 years, it has slowed down those people that go really fast and like to go in that little side lane. I can say that it has slowed down that kind of traffic. Whether that, I think from a safety standpoint, that's good. But like Dre says, if you want to ride a bike on 47, you have to go on like 46 or one of the other streets to get to the lake because 47 is too dangerous.
And Alderman, just to piggyback on that, what was the original intent? And this is Tory Barrett, sorry. What was the original intent of the bump outs? Like why was that introduced initially?
That predates me, Tory, but my understanding is it was put in for safety, a safety measure to do exactly what Steve said, which was to slow down the speed on 47th Street and to make it safer.
So I think that if that can be incorporated to the overall, development for the proposed site, then there's a way to activate that bump out and to incorporate bike lanes as well. But as Stephen and Andre previously shared, just the bump outs there without a specific use, I think I think you definitely want to incorporate that into whatever development design is coming for that particular area.
Very good, Tory. Makes sense. More discussion on the bump outs later.
I wanted to add one thing about the bump outs because I never really understood them. And I'm remembering when CDOT initially presented them as part of the streetscape, what they were explaining was that we needed to visualize that this was going to be, more of an entertainment corridor, nighttime economy, all of those kinds of things. And that it's hard to imagine now because we have so many missing teeth, but they were explaining to us that this was going to encourage, people to be able to cross, and while we were saying, well, cross at the corner and use the light, they're like, no, this is a whole corridor. So I might be on one side of the street and say, oh, let me see what's in the window at Gallery Gashard. And, I've got a kind of a place to stand for safety and look and decide to cross over. Let me run over here and grab something. And so they were communicating that this was kind of part of this new urbanism and walkability. And the bump outs were explained to us as those kinds of points to develop those social nodes, et cetera. So I don't know, but obviously we're talking about visioning for the future and really looking at the whole corridor from a cultural, entertainment, all of that.
Yeah. And to that point, Paula, it's my understanding that those bump outs are used for traffic calming measures. So like somebody mentioned earlier, to slow people down from flying kind of up the side of the roads. But it has been met with mixed reviews, right? Because bump outs equal less parking. Bump outs also equal less room for bike lanes and things like that. So it is something that I think we need to assess because there are pros and cons of having those. But just kind of having these discussions and kind of talking through what makes the most sense for the bump outs that are there. I don't know if they plan on being removed anytime soon, but then how do we utilize those? How do we activate those, like somebody mentioned earlier? So thanks for that comment.
Well, thank you. But, particularly last year, the year before, we kind of had a love affair with having, I forgot what they were called, Rhonda, where they were like these little seating areas that were in the street. Obviously 75th Street did it even more so. But we created, these little areas. I forgot the name.
People spots.
What were they?
Oh, people spots.
Oh, people spot. So I don't want to, turn around and say, okay, we're not trying to do this, and then we turn around and need people spots again. And I just think we need to have more knowledge of what we're getting to, what we're aiming for.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great point. And to that point, we do want to build upon this conversation. I know we are a little bit over time. I'm looking at checking my watch. So thank you everybody for your participation. We do want to build on these conversations and bring in both CDOT, CTA, and other city departments that can help us kind of support these infrastructure improvements to this table to do a little bit of that education, like you were saying, Rhonda. Paula, around the necessity for certain things, more so education around the different streetscapes and what they're able to do. So we do plan to bring those agencies to this table to have those additional conversations, but we did want to basically get the communities to start thinking about what their priorities are and kind of identifying some of the needs along the corridor. So this is just an initial conversation, what I'm sure to be a more in-depth conversation as we try to develop plans again with those sister agencies. So that is all I have for this evening. Again, I want to open it up for questions if anybody had any final questions that they wanted to discuss. If not, thank you everybody for your time. Just to go over next steps, our next roundtable will be April 28th. We always host our Bronzeville roundtables the last Wednesday of every month. So again, this one will be focused on those developer proposals, introducing the development teams, and again, giving a really high-level overview of what the developments are for that Bronzeville RFP site. And with that, I want to close it out. And again, thank everybody for coming. I don't know if the Alderman or anybody else wants to, or Rhonda has any closing remarks. But if not, again, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for your participation, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Kim.
you, Kim. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Happy
All right.
Easter.
Happy Easter.
Thank you, everybody.